be mindful that this council meeting is being recorded and is webcast. Be mindful of your language, please.
Now declare the 1st of March committee meeting open, and I now request acknowledgement country from Councillor Deanne Douglas.
Yana. I would like to acknowledge the Wonnarua people, traditional custodians of the land we meet on today. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and the culture of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait people across the nation. We have been elected by our community to deliver as our elders have in the past. I would also like to recognise the strong ongoing connection of First Nations people of the lands and waters where we do our work and their commitment to care for country.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. I'll now ask the sitting prayer to be read by Councillor Dunn.
Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility and of the needs of those we serve, we may promote the true welfare of your people, exercise wisely and faithfully the authority committed to us, and advance the common good through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Push the hand on the microphone. Okay, item 3, apologies and leave of absence. We have one apology from Councillor Skulls. Have someone to move in that way? Yes. Moved by Councillor McNeil, seconded by Councillor Marshall. All those in favour, if you can raise your hand. Unanimous. Item 4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Someone to move from that point. Moved by Councillor Woodruff. Someone to second that motion. Second, Councillor Leckie. I now put that forward. All those in favour, if you can raise your hand. Unanimous. Do we have Councillor Bowditch on the line? Present? I can't see. Can someone confirm? Yes. Okay. Disclosures of any pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest. I'll go around the room starting with Councillor Woodruff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have several. Community infrastructure, item 11.3, page 221. The item title is Mount Pleasant Operations, Section 138, Roads Act 1993 to permit for road maintenance. I have a significant pecuniary, Mr Mayor. My employer undertakes work on behalf of the applicant. Also on 11.4, page 227, Mangoola Coal Continued Operations Road Maintenance Management Plan. I have a significant pecuniary as my employer undertakes work for the applicant. Also, Mr Mayor, in Corporate and Community Services, item 12.1 to page 266, selection of council committees and delegate positions. I have a significant pecuniary. My employer undertakes work for Bengalla, Liddell, Mangoola, Mount Pleasant, so I won't be taking part in the voting for the CCC. Also on 12.1, Mr Mayor, page 266, election of council committees and delegate positions. I have a significant pecuniary interest as one of Muswellbrook Coal CCC. A member of my immediate family is employed by Muswellbrook Coal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodruff. Councillor Marshall.
I have a pecuniary interest in the Committee of Infrastructure, 11.3, page 221, Mount Pleasant, as my employer works there. And also the Lawn Street Drainage, I have a pecuniary interest in that as well, on 19.1, page C3, as my daughter works as a tenderer.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Martin.
I have a item number 19.1, page number 3, Lawn Street Drainage Upgrade. I have a pecuniary Trust. I own a business on the road network.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor McNeil, none? Becky, none? Any other councillors with any notices? Pecuniary, non-pecuniary? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I have a non-pecuniary interest on 11.3, page 221, Mount Pleasant Operation S.138, Roads Act 1993. The company I employed by does business at Mount Pleasant.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. And I have a disclosure for item 14.1, the Bengalla modification project. Significant non-pecuniary, I have a family member that does study work there, so I'll clear that now. We have 3 people in public participation tonight. Mr. Granville Taylor, item 12.2 for the Joint Regional Planning Panel. Mark Zizza, item 10.2 for 12 Overbury Street, Denman, in relation to the change of use and alterations and additions. And also Michael Valentine in relation to 15.1, the question with notice, it's on record regarding the squash courts. I'll ask now Mr. Granville Taylor to come forward for item 12.2 in relation to the Joint Regional Planning Panel. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Taylor. And if you just push the button in, it's a new system when you speak. You have to hold your finger in unfortunately.
Is that fine too loud? Is that okay?
So I just need to move that speaker.
Try again. Oh, push the button. Mr. Mayor. Try. Mr. Mayor, council staff, and councillors. I'm here this evening to talk on item 12.2, which is a nomination as the community representative on the Joint Regional Planning Panel. I've already submitted a resume with a few comments, and I won't add a great deal to that other than perhaps some off-the-cuff comments, and also so that the councillors who don't know me can possibly ask any questions at the end. Excuse me. So what I did describe was initially my educational experience, which I think was over something like 8 years. That's not necessarily reflected in use at the planning panel, but it does actually give you an opportunity to research detailed topics, and it does give you an opportunity to adopt an even-handed approach so that matters which aren't necessarily black or white can be looked at from several angles and then reach what I think is the best conclusion with other members of the panel. And that was both, I think, developed in my scientific experience and also in my university experience in business administration and furthermore in my many years as a stockbroker. I'll also comment specifically, I think, on some of the employment experience I've had. A lot of people may think a stockbroker sits behind a desk, waving arms around and looking at a screen with share prices moving. That's only a small part of the job. It also means going out to factories, to cotton farms, to scientific operations, all of which need, in fact, a very deep understanding. Floating a company, which is now called an IPO, often requires anything up to 6 or 8 months' work in the field. And literally that is in the field with a cotton farm in the 1980s. So all of those things add to experience, which can then be used in later life in areas such as planning. As many of you will know, I've lived in Muswellbrook for 17 years. We moved here in 2005. There were probably some of the younger people at that stage to retire to Muswellbrook. And we've had a very happy experience since. And for those of you who visited Skelter House, that was our main reason for coming here. And it's been actually very useful to use that particular property for things such as garden parties and meetings and things like the Upper Hunter Woodworkers, where I became the apprentice. And it was probably the oldest apprentice ever. However, I have also had some very useful experience in the community, in particular starting in 2013, which was a group called Machine, which was to lobby the New South Wales Government for what we hope would be a new hospital. In the event we've got almost got a fully refurbished modern hospital. For those of you who've seen the work to date, is extremely good, and courtesy of our new member in the upper hand today, Zell, that will be finished in about 3 years' time. That was a very satisfying piece of work and a very constructive committee, which included 2 people who were later named Citizen of the Year, Jenny Hinchin and Tony Mint. The great thing is, in fact, that groups like that can do wonders for the community, as did both the members of this council and members of the state government, who are very, very cooperative. So those are the words I wish to add tonight, but I'm willing to answer any questions or clarify anything that's in my resume.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Taylor. Does anyone have any questions in relation to 12.2 for Mr. Taylor? The JRPP? No? No, thank you very much for your time, and appreciate you coming along and giving us a speech.
You're very welcome.
I'll go to that item. Thank you. I now ask Mark Zizza in relation to 10.2, 12 Ogilvy Street. Mark, the same as Mr. Taylor, you've got 3 minutes. If you wish to speak any longer, you can ask, but if you just want to set that microphone up, you might get a little bit better coverage. Thanks. Ready to.
Okay, in relation to 12 Ogilvy Street, people don't know, my name is Mark Zizza, Royal Hotel Denver. I've been there for 27 years. We acquired the property next door, which is formerly John Scott's Garage. We bought it under permission we knew possibly was contaminated. Since then, we've put an application to turn into a licensed food premises. Must state that the Main Street Denver now, council's done a very good job in doing the one-way beautification. We're getting a lot of praise from tourists and locals for the work that's been done. What I'm trying to do, my part, is create another reason to come to Denver. And the food outlet is a success, it's been successful in the pub, and we want to emulate that to a certain degree next door. A little bit of headwind with council conditions. We had a problem with delivery service and such, off-street parking, contaminated site. And the police have put in some objections to the licensed premise being there's 28 licensed premises, and we've had 1 or 2 little incidents at the pub over 27 years. So, but as I understand now, I talked to Hamish earlier on, the police are happy with the modifications we made to the drawings. Luckily we are next door. We're currently do a boundary adjustment, which will allow off-street parking, off-street deliveries for services. But we come to a headwind with the parking. Now I'm putting forward an argument that since the car parking has been increased at the rear of the main street, and all people have contributed, all tax and council ratepayers have contributed to that car park, I feel that I have, and I do own a few properties in town, that we have contributed enough to warrant to use that car park for our facilities. And that car park has been built for a reason. It's been extended to increase trade to the main street, and it is not being utilised to 100%. And especially the fact that when we will be operating at night time, you could virtually run down the street, there wouldn't be too many cars there, and definitely the rear car park is usually empty. So we've got an alternate use for an alternate hours. It's been brought up to my attention that possibly the council would consider a contribution to council for parking, but that goes back to the fact that I believe that we've already contributed to it, and we're going to utilise the car park. Second thing is the contamination report. Now I'm more than willing and happy to do a contamination report on the site, but it's looking at quotes between 20 and 25,000 to do such a thing. I've asked the town planners to put a condition of approval that the soil testing and such will be conducted subject to approval, rather than the way they've asked for now to be done additionally before we get any sort of forward progress with an approval. So if you understand where I'm coming from, I'd like that to be a condition of approval rather than a part of the application process. So if you, and I spoke to Tanya 2 weeks ago, and she gave the indication that they were flexible on that now. So in the early correspondence, it was no, it was part of the condition of application, and she said since then council would consider looking at it in another light. That's where we stand. And just to finish off, it's important that we get a lot more eateries and reasons to come to Main Street at Denman. We back at the hotel are offering free caravan parking overnight, such as it's a huge success, and it does benefit anyone in Main Street to have more places to visit to spend the day event at Denman. So that's my.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Zizza. Anyone have any questions in relation to 10.2, the item before us? Councillor Woodruff? Just have to
Yes.
press the microphone though, Councillor Woodruff, even though it seems silly, he's behind you, but...
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Zizza, do you realise that what we're asking for in regard to parking is only for the addition onto the building, not the existing one that used to be Scott's Garage? And are you firm that you can't see your way clear to providing the parking based on the additional square footage only?
Well, the site doesn't really allow it. We have made allowances down to the initial square metres at the front. The vacant bit of land was going to be all pergola and seating arrangements. We've halved that now to give access to a truck, and the truck would hit a dead end because it's an L-shaped block. And now we proceed to widen the block with using, luckily we own the property next door, to give that extended room so you can get like a 5-ton Pantech or something down there. So there's no parking facilities inside. So if you want to use like Gerard's for an example, we're going to pick up the whole. Unfortunately, Gerard's restaurant's a few doors up, very popular restaurant, is closed now. To use an example, they never had a parking issue problem at night time. I'm sure a lot of councils here have eaten there, and it was never really an issue. And that was prior to the parking created by council. Now that parking in the rear created by council it's there for a reason. It's there to be used by people using the facilities in the Main Street. So if you go back to a site like Darlinghurst or Surrey Hills, where I used to live years ago, yes, contribution to council was important for parking, and that was the contribution. The theory behind contribution to council was one day they may build a car park, and they will house, with the funds they collect from all the community, they will have the funds together to build this car park. Denman Muswell Council have done it the other way around. We've agreed to a rate rise to build the car park. And that's the argument I'm saying with that. If no figure has been put forward to me for a contribution to council, I would possibly have to consider it. If we couldn't come up to it with an arrangement tonight, I don't want to bury this application. I think it's worthwhile, but at the same time, if it becomes too expensive, the place will either become a storage room or back to a garage or something like that. And I don't think that's the direction council want to take it. It's a beautiful old building. We're going to we put a heritage report in. It's the locals. There was a favourable reply from locals on Facebook. So people in the town do want to set it up, and it's just an added facility for Denman. And the thing is, build it and they will come. The more that Denman creates coffee shops and food outlets, the more attention we're going to get. The better off we're going to go for developments down the street. Someone's going to want to move there. When people want to move there, the price of real estate goes up, and therefore developments become a feasible contribution to the area. So if we get the Main Street right, people will want to come and visit and live.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor McNeil?
Yeah, Mark, you indicated there that you would be willing to sit down with council and discuss a contribution towards parking. I'm sure you've read the report, which says that they have reached out to you and you were unwilling to have those negotiations. So would you be in favour if the item was deferred to the next council meeting to allow those discussions to take place.
Okay, well, additionally, I would like the approval without the contribution of council. That's why I've come to the meeting tonight, to plead my case on that. I would have to, after that, consider the proposal of paying a fee. But as everyone here likes to hang on to the money and not do such a thing, I just think I've got a good enough argument for you guys to discuss to realise that, one, it's a good thing we're doing. Two, we're operating in different hours to where the car park that was built for this purpose is not being used, and just use that sort of basic information to conclude that we can use this facility without a contribution to council.
Councillor McNeil, further question?
How would you respond to the thoughts that there'd be an equity issue with you not contributing to car park and not providing additional car parks, and that equity in relation to other business owners who are also paying their rates?
Well, it's only come about, and council do, this is a typical, normal thing for council to do. As soon as someone does a change of use, then council come up with this, with rules and regulations. We went with it with the main street, with the entrances to the shops. I shop in Main Street, pizza shop, and we had an issue because we changed the use, but to provide wheelchairs. These things, you're always going to hit these hurdles dealing with council, because it's an opportunity to bring forward new legislation to make an old building try to conform to new practices. These are things that bury projects because they become unfeasible to do it. If we're going to look at 30,000 to 40,000 contribution to council, and that's a pluck out of the air, we're going to look at $30,000 to $40,000 worth of regeneration of the soil. It becomes too hard for a person like me to develop a site like that. So the council has to look in two ways. Do they want it to happen? Do they want to promote it to happen? Or are they going to look so far ahead that nothing gets done in the street?
Thank you, Mr. Sisson. No further questions? Okay, thank you. I now ask for Mike Valentine on 15.1, question with notice. As you know, Councillor Valentine, there's no motion put forward. This is a question with notice to address the council.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I didn't think I'd be back speaking at council again, but anyway, thank you for welcoming me aboard. I just wanted to bring and raise to council's attention, I know, and this is in relation to the Muswellbrook Squash Club, and the fact that it's been Muswellbrook Squash Club have been a part of the community for over 60 years. Very successful club over that period, with all volunteer members and building successful club competitions, and basically being in the Shire and being at Muswellbrook for all of that time, except for the last 10 years. And in all of that time, we've had to, I suppose, build a club based on private ownership of buildings and squash courts. It's been a very difficult process. It's been very difficult at times to work with various private owners. It's really in relation to what's actually happening now, and it really is the future of squash in Muswellbrook. And I'm not just talking about the future of the Muswellbrook Squash Club. I believe it's the future of the squash in Muswellbrook. Being a successful club and being a successful organisation, we have volunteers that are out there promoting it through schools, assisting community organisations, and actually trying to build up a sport in town, like every other sport is here in town. When unfortunately the courts that Gary Harris owned were closed, almost 10 years ago now, our super cheap Muswellbrook Squash Club had nowhere to go, so we then went to the Denman courts, and thank you for council for allowing us to be there, and successfully run competitions at Denman. But obviously it's very difficult to run competitions at Denman for Muswellbrook residents. A lot of people don't want to travel, so the competition obviously in numbers dwindled down to the point where we still have a good base of numbers, but it was all on the premise that we were going back to Muswellbrook. And for 10 years we've been lobbying council, lobbying government, putting together, and part of that process was actually getting a $300,000 grant, or at least money put aside from council towards this project. Now, it was back in the day before anybody else was involved except the Muswellbrook Squash Club, and we had lots of discussions to and from with council and council staff. Since that time, suggestions were brought forward to us that we actually look at the golf club renovations that were going on at the time, and we agreed to be part of that process, and we helped secure other government funds towards that project. In the meantime, what happened was the RSL then obviously took over the golf club and became owners, and we went with the RSL club and also assisted them with the builders that were part of the, not just with the builders, but also the advisors of squash, and helping them secure the project, if you like, and being part of it all the way. It's only just been recently that we've now been informed by the RSL that as the squash club, we are no longer welcome to be at that club. Our members are allowed to be there as citizens, but our club has no home. And so essentially we've had 10 years of all this work and effort from the community organisation to be left on. So we have a great fear that it's not just the courts, but it's the actual club itself, and also squash in Muswellbrook, because the RSL and the golf club have no expertise. They might have 1 or 2 members, but they don't actually have the bulk of squash playing members, and especially all the long-term members, us. So do they have the motivation to keep squash alive and going in town when really their main business is the RSL or the golf club? We believe that those funds that were actually put aside for us, it was misrepresented and probably fraudulently, I believe anyway, fraudulently.
We're going to have to put you up there before we go into a fast path that we could, go down a path with any defamatory comments, and it's just been 4.5 minutes, that's all. So if you're happy, can I open it to councillors to ask any questions that they may wish to ask you? Councillors, any questions? No? No questions? Any? No? I thank you for your time, Mr. Valentine. Appreciate you can.
Is it okay if I just ask? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I just ask one thing?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I just ask one thing? Just to council. We'd just like to meet with council at some time to see what we can do to actually help progress squash in the Shire. We still need to speak with our members who don't know all of these details yet about further action that we might want to take in regards to squash. But we do see that we can actually meet with council and council staff to be able to see what we can do to progress it.
Yeah, no problem at all. We can organise that through the general manager and staff. Thank you very much. Okay, no further public participation. We are now at item 7, mayoral minutes, which there are none. Item number 8, general business, which there is no general business. Business number 9, item 9, business arising, there are no business arising. Item 10, 10.1, DA 2005-451, the road naming application. There's an officer's recommendation. Council approves the proposed street name for exhibition and notification to the Geographical Names Board, Herdsman's Close. 2, delegate the determination of the street naming application to the General Manager where no submissions are received by objecting to the proposed street name. 3, where one or more public submissions are received that raise objections to the proposed name, or where a different street name is proposed by the Geographical Names Board, street naming proposal is to be re-reported to council. Do we have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Marshall. Someone to second that motion? Councillor Mahajan. Anyone? I'll be able to put that forward as a motion. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor? Does anyone wish to speak against? Most of that on? I now put that motion forward. If all those in favour can raise a hand. Councillor, someone's got Councillor Bowden on screen. Yes. That motion is carried. Item 10.2, DA 221-87, the commercial change of use and alterations and additions to 12 Overbury Street, Denman. There's the officer's recommendation there, fairly detailed. Councillor Woodruff, you wish to speak?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I wish to move a deferment to give us the opportunity to discuss the situation with Mr Ziller rather than knock it on the head tonight. Thank you.
Can we have a motion forward there from Councillor Woodruff for a deferral until this item be deferred until the next council meeting, to allow further discussion to be held with the applicant and council staff. Does anyone wish to second that motion? Councillor McNeil. Sorry, Councillor Bowditch, there was just a bit of a delay there. We've got Councillor McNeil as a seconder. Does anyone wish to speak against that motion? All those in favour, if you could raise a hand. They're unanimous. That's the item to be deferred to allow further discussions to be held between the applicant and council. That's item 10.2. That's motion is carried. 10.3. The planning proposed to rezone the former forestry site at 72 to 74 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook. The officer's recommendation is that Council 1 endorses the planning proposal contained in Attachment A, planning proposal, administrative amendment 72 to 74 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook, and requests a parliamentary council opinion to amend Muswellbrook Local Environmental Plan 2009, and 2, makes the amending plan under delegation pursuant to action section 3.36 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. I have someone to move that recommendation.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Woodruff. Is there a seconder? Councillor Drayton. Would anyone put that motion forward? Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Woodruff?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I commend the recommendation of staff. I think it's a great idea to move from where they currently are to the new location. I think it'll be better for everybody involved.
Thank you, Councillor Woodruff. Councillor Drayton, anyone wish to speak against or to the item? I've now put that motion forward. That's that 10.3 officer's recommendation. If all those in favour can raise a hand. Unanimous. That motion is now carried. Item 10.4. Amendment to the Muswellbrook DCP 2009, Section 13 Floodplain Management. Officer's recommendation. Council adopts Section 13 Floodplain Management for the Muswellbrook DCP 2009 as provided in Attachment A. Put forward that recommendation. Does someone wish to move that recommendation? Councillor Woodruff. Someone to second? Councillor Mahajan. Now put it forward as a motion. Councillor Woodruff, do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Mahajan. Anyone against or anyone wish to speak to? I'll now put it as a motion. Those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Declare it unanimous. That motion is carried. 10.5, the submission on the draft Hunter Regional Plan 2041. Officer's recommendation, Council authorises the General Manager to make a submission on the draft Hunter Regional Plan 2041 in accordance with Attachment A. Does someone wish to move that recommendation?
Yes, I'm happy to move it, Mr Mayor, and also commend the report from Sharon. She did a very good job, and thank you very much.
Someone wish to second that motion? Councillor Marshall. The recommendation, sorry, I'll put it as a motion. All those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Unanimous. I think I've declared that motion carried. Item 10.6, submission on Agri-Tourism Amendment Board Officer's recommendation. The Council authorises the General Manager to make a submission on Council's behalf to seek inclusion of the agri-tourism terms and clauses in Muswellbrook LEP 2009, as shown in the nominations outlined in Attachment B. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Barry. Someone to second? Councillor Leckie. Anyone wish to speak? Anyway, sorry, I just wish to put that forward as a motion first, that's fine, yeah. Do you wish to speak to it, councillor?
Yeah, just in a
You
question.
have to push the button, sorry, it's there, Mr. Councillor McNeil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the General Manager. In relation to the
You have to stand,
non-support,
Have to stand. Pull that microphone closer, sorry, Gus. Miss Councillor.
just want to understand why Council believes that moving to Central Hunter would be a regressive step for the area.
Just pass that through to the General Manager.
Thank you, Councillor McNeil. I'll just ask our Head of Planning, Sharon. Which item are you asking?
Sorry, Councillor McNeil, was that 10.6 that you're speaking to? What?
Agriculture.
No, that wasn't so.
Okay.
My apologies.
Thank you, Sharon. Apologies. So we've got 10.6. We have the recommendation put forward. Now put it to a motion. All those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Declare the motion carried. Item 10.7. Update to Council Planning, Environmental and Regulatory Services Office recommendation is the information contained in this report note. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Woodruff.
Happy to second.
Councillor Drayton, second. Do you wish to speak for it? No. I'll now put it to a motion. All those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Unanimous. Okay, that motion is carried. Item 11.1, the Water and Sewerage Development Service plans. Officer's recommendation. Council 1 adopts the Water Development Servicing Plan and Sewerage Development Servicing Plan attached to the report, indexing the charges to a 2022-23 level for application from the 1st of July 2022. 2. Maintains development services charges in Council's approved schedule of fees and charges adjusted to the consumer price index variation for each financial year. And 3. Obtains registrations of the adopted developer servicing plans with New South Wales Department of Planning, Industry and Environment Water. Do I have someone to do that recommendation? Councillor Woodruff. Someone to second? Councillor Marshall. Sorry, Deanne.
Yeah, no, let Deanne have it. I'll give you this one.
Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Woodruff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Long overdue. Again, excellent report and pleasing result.
Does anyone else wish to speak for the item against? Now, there's a motion. All those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Declare the motion carried. 11.2. Concept design for Denman to Sandy Hollow water pipeline. Officer's recommendation has been tabled as Council approves the transfer of $300,000 funding from the Water Fund Reserve to expenditure ledger number 5010. Okay, I won't read that then. To enable tenderers to be invited for the development of a concept design for the Denman to Sandy Hollow water pipeline project. Do I have someone to move that? Yes, Councillor Leckie, seconded by Councillor Marshall. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Leckie?
If someone wants a question?
No? Anyone's got an
Well, I will speak.
You just have to push that button in front of you, Councillor Leckie, and keep your finger on it. You have to hold it in and keep your finger.
This has been a problem from 1995 forever, and I think it's great that we're addressing it and getting some good water to that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leckie. I now put that motion forward. Sorry, Councillor Woodruff.
I'd also like to speak for the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Again, it's through the hard work of our staff that has lobbied for this money. It's twofold. It just turns out that Sandy Hollow actually happens to be the second recipient. The initial funding is to progress the Abattoir plan for Yarrawal. So I think it's a win not only for council but the establishment of an abattoir and also for the village of Sandy Hollow. If you're not aware, Sandy Hollow's never had potable water as such. Early on in the council term, we did, previous councillor Burkill divined a spot down on the Goulburn River to allow us to have water for the township in its first place, because originally it was only through the grace of Rosemount Estate that allowed the township to get some water, and that would only really happen when we were irrigating our vines in the Sandy Hollow vineyards there, and once we got an overflow, that's the only time Sandy Hollow would get a semi-permanent supply of water. So council back in the day recognised, along with the community in Sandy Hollow, that that was lacking, although the quality of water's never been good. Council over the years has tried its best to reduce the hardness, but this now, Mr Mayor, is we're very fortunate for everyone in the community in Sandy Hollow, and also with the prospect of jobs to come if the Avator goes ahead.
Very concerned, Councillor Woodruff.
Well said.
Yarrawonga, not Yarrawonga.
Well said, Councillor Woodruff. I think we all echo those thoughts. Councillor Marshall, you wish to speak for it?
Yep, I'd also like to speak for it because it's something that's well overdue. I grew up there as a 10, 12-year-old child, and we pumped the water from the vineyards at that stage as well, through Mount Danga vineyard, and yeah, it's the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Does anyone else wish to speak for? Is anyone going to speak against? All those in favour, if you raise your hand. I declare that unanimous and carried. Item 11.3. Councillor Marshall, you may have to leave the room for this one.
Yeah, me too.
Councillor Douglas, Councillor Woodruff. I note that they've left the room at 6:42. Okay, Mount Pleasant Operations, Section 138 Roads Act 1993 permit for road maintenance. Officer's recommendation before us is Council 1, delegates to the General Manager authority to sign the S138 Roads Act 1993 permit approval for ongoing road maintenance works, and 2, notes the Mac Energy Mount Pleasant Project Road Maintenance Plan Rev 01, review 01 attached as Appendix B to the report. Do I have someone to move on that recommendation? Councillor Drayton, seconded Councillor Leckie. Now, anyone to speak for or against? I'll now put that as a motion. If everyone in favour can raise a hand. Declare that unanimous, and that motion is carried. 11.4, I believe that you may wish to, I think there's councillor conflicted with 11.4. Note that Councillor Woodruff has remained out, Councillor Marshall and Councillor Douglas returned at 6:43. Item 11.4. Mangoola Coal Continued Operation Road Maintenance Management Plan. Officer's recommendation is Council approves the Mangoola Continued Operations Road Maintenance Management Plan attached to the report. Do I have someone to move that recommendation?
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
Happy to move it. Councillor Drayton, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Now put it as a motion. Does anyone wish to speak to it? Councillor Drayton? No. All those in favour, if you can raise a hand. Declare it unanimous. That motion is carried. Now ask Councillor Woodruff's coming back in at 6:44. We're now at 11.5, the large plant replacement program. Officer's recommendation, Council 1 endorses the 2021-22 large plant replacement program. 2, approves the transfer of $648,031 from the large plant and vehicle reserve to expenditure ledger number there, plant items large capital. And 3, request the procurement of plant items as prioritised in the report. Do I have someone to move with that recommendation? Councillor Woodruff, Councillor Marshall. Now put that forward as a motion. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Woodruff? No. Councillor Marshall, no. Want to speak against? To the motion? Now put it forward as a motion. Councillor, you can raise your hand if all those in favour. Declare it unanimous. No, motion is carried. Okay, Page 11.6, the major project status report. The officer's recommendation and information contained in this report be noted. Someone to move that recommendation, Councillor McNeil, Councillor Drayton. Now put it forward as a motion. Anyone wish to speak to? No? I'll now put it forward as a motion. All those in favour? Oh, you have a question, Councillor Woodruff, yes?
If I may, Mr Mayor, just in regard to the result of the tender, will that come to the next meeting, or believe it should have come to the February one?
I'll ask that through the General Manager. 11.6, yes. 11.6.
Denman Heritage Village.
Well, that will come to the next meeting. The tender report is delayed through to April.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodruff. I now put that forward as a motion. All those in favour, if you could raise a hand. Declare that unanimous and that motion carried. Item 11.7, review of the best practice management of water supply and sewage services for 2019-2020. Officer's recommendation, council notes the information contained in this report. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Barry. Councillor Douglas seconding. Anyone wish to speak to? Against? Now put that forward as a motion. All those in favour, if you could raise a hand. All those against? No. That's unanimous. Now declare that motion carried. Item 11.8, future fund policy. Officer's recommendation, council endorses the revised future fund policy for public exhibition, and 2, council endorses the future fund long-term financial plan. Does someone wish to move on that motion? Councillor McNeil, Councillor Mahajan. Anyone to speak against? Councillor, sorry, Woodruff.
I'm against it, yeah.
Okay, Councillor McNeil, do you wish to speak to the item? Oh, sorry, muted. Yes, that second the recommendation for Councillor.
Yeah, I think the report speaks for itself, and I would like to thank council staff for putting that report and the presentation together. I think it clearly highlights the council's financial position and the best way to move forward with regard to the future fund.
Councillor Mahajan, do you wish to add anything? Councillor Woodruff.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I do appreciate the report. I just don't tend to agree with it. I think that the future fund is exactly that. I suppose it'll all depend on where council goes with the UHEDC. I think the two are closely linked. I think both of those things were born by council with a look to the future of our communities, how they could be sustained and how we could best plan that way.
Councillor Drayton.
Yeah, I wish to speak against the motion as well. In essence, it ceases to become a future fund. It doesn't have money allocated, $3 million is coming away from it, it pays a dividend, so it ceases to become a future fund. In fact, and the whole idea of it, my understanding, the whole idea of the future fund was to obviously make investments as it has and pay down that, well, at the moment, 2 reasons. Pay down that debt, one, while interest rates were low, we've never seen them lower at the moment, and 2, while we have the mining rates. As we're all aware, mining rates in this council make up some 70% of our total rateable income, with obviously 30% being left from residence rates. When mining rates go, and they will go, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be when they go, it appears to me as that's when we're leaving all the debt now, and all we're doing is putting back, and effectively it might be what it is, we're saying we'll leave for you down the track, someone else down the track, and I certainly don't agree with that. So I oppose the motion. It would mean without that mining rateable income, effectively what it will mean, if we do lose that, or even part of it, But what we would do, what would happen, mathematically what would happen, or realistically what would happen, is residents in this shire, their residential rates would have to triple to continue to provide the same service level as we provide now. And frankly, I'm not prepared to move that way.
Hang on, Councillor Marshall, Councillor McNeil, do you?
No, he can't.
Sorry, Councillor
He's
Marshall.
spoken already.
Yeah.
Also against the motion, I believe that the future fund should be just that, a future fund, and as Councillor Woodruff and Councillor Drayton has spoken, I agree with that entirely, that it should be a future fund, not a bank account.
All right, we have a motion forward from Councillor McNeil and seconded by Councillor Mahajan.
Yes, the right reply.
Sorry, yeah, Councillor McNeil. Right reply.
Can you lock that on, or just?
No,
Yeah, we'll have to get to that point with this new technology.
yes.
Look, I don't disagree with Councillor Drayton or Woodruff. It's just to me a timing thing, and at this point in time, we have a lot of demand on our funds, and as we saw at the presentation, our discretionary spending is around about 5%, so it's almost non-existent. We have a community survey which is putting a lot of pressure on us to service the community better, and as we're told, and as we can read in the Local Government Act, we have to make financial decisions being mindful of the community's expectations and community priorities. So the priorities are there. I think we should listen to the community. And this changing the future fund in the manner that's suggested doesn't mean it's got to be there forever. It can be, if your financial position improves in 2 or 3 years' time, sure, we can revert back to a position of higher investments.
Thank you, Councillor McNeil. I can't see the screen, I apologise. Councillor Bowditch, is he indicating, is he on, we lost him, is he?
No, he's on screen.
Okay, no problem. Rightio, that motion, I now commit that motion that Councillor McNeil put forward in relation to the future fund, the recommendation in the officer's report. Sorry. Councillor Mahajan. Councillor Mahajan was the seconder.
Gus has had right to reply.
Yeah,
That's
you
it.
had the right to, sorry. That's a second, you had the right to do it that time, sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Mahajan, you can't.
I just want to have my
Councillor
guy.
Mahajan, you can't speak unfortunately, sorry.
It's okay.
I now put that motion forward. The council endorses the revised future fund policy. It was moved by Councillor McNeil, seconded by Councillor Mahajan, and now put it to a vote. If those in favour of the motion can raise a hand. Those against? Councillor Woodruff, Marshall, Dunn and Drayton, and can anyone tell me on screen?
Yes. What was Councillor Bowditch's vote?
Councillor Bowditch?
Trying to say
For the motion. So I declare that motion carried 7-4. We need 7-4, yes. Now move on to item.
I have my vote recorded. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr.
On the
Councillor
same, please.
Yeah, we'll ask them all to be recorded. That's no problem at all. 11.9 sponsorship request, Rotary Club of Muswellbrook. Officer's recommendation, council makes a catering donation to the Rotary Club of Muswellbrook for the 2021 Science and Engineering Challenge and are encouraged to apply for the council's community grants program for future events. Do I have someone to move that motion, Councillor Douglas? Someone second recommendation? Yeah. Councillor Marshall. Anyone wish to speak to that item? Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I would. I'd just like to commend the Rotary Club for the great work that they do in the community, and it is fantastic that council have partnered with them in this thing, and happy to offer any support for future funding if they need help writing grants going through that process.
Thank you, councillor Douglas. Now commit that as a motion. No one else chooses to speak. Those in favour, if you could raise your hand. Put it on screen. Yes. Declare that motion carried. Item 12 corporate services, corporate and community services. 12.1, the election to council committees and delegation position officers recommendation. That 1, the committee structure be endorsed. 2, the elections by show of hands be held for councillors' positions on the committees. Chair and deputy chair, can we make an amendment to that? I'll just put forward an amendment actually, if that's all right, with number 3 being the elected members be elected for the committee. Item 3, the members be elected for the committees. The councillors be elected for the committees. Okay. Appointment of councillors to the committees and delegate positions be to September 2024 for the following committees. Committee 1 of the Finance Review Advisory Committee is currently elected, and with the added Councillor Leckie. The State Significant Development Committee consists of Councillor Reynolds, Councillor McNeil and Councillor Sculls, who have already been elected, with Councillor Leckie and Councillor Woodruff. The Aboriginal Reconciliation Committee is Councillor Bowditch, Councillor Douglas as members. The Arts and Culture Committee is Councillor Dunn and Councillor Sculls. The Audit and Risk Improvement Committee is already Councillor Leckie. The Business and Tourism Committee is Councillor Barry, Councillor Dunn, Councillor McNeil, Councillor Maharton and Councillor Sculls. The Heritage Committee is Councillor Dunn, Councillor McNeil and Councillor Sculls. The Local Emergency Management Committee is Councillor Bowditch. The Muswellbrook Shire Bushfire Management Committee is Councillor Bowditch. The Rural Fire Services Level Agreement Liaison Committee is Councillor Bowditch. The SES Service Level Agreement Liaison Committee is Councillor Bowditch. You can hear me, can't you, at the moment? The Muswellbrook Shire Local Traffic Committee consists of Councillor Bowditch and Councillor Marshall. The Future Fund Committee consists of Councillor Douglas, Councillor Maharton, Councillor Sculls and Councillor Woodruff. The Industrial Closures Committee consists of Councillor Drayton and Councillor Sculls. The Muswellbrook Bypass Advisory Committee consists of Councillor Bowditch, Councillor Maharton, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sculls and Councillor Woodruff. The AGL Macquarie Dialogue Group consists of Councillor Drayton. The Bengalla Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Drayton and Councillor Leckie. The Liddell Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Leckie. The Mangoola Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Dunn. Mount Arthur Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Leckie. Mount Pleasant Mine Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Drayton. The Spur Hill Malabar Coal Consultative Committee consists of Councillor Drayton and Councillor Dunn. Arts Upper Hunter consists of Councillor Leckie. The Local Health Advisory Committee consists of Councillor Douglas and Councillor Woodruff. The Upper Hunter County Council Weeds Authority consists of Councillor McNeil and Councillor Marshall. The Joint Regional Planning Panel is Councillor Barry and Councillor Sculls at this present stage, and the Hunter Joint Organisation Transcare, correct? The Transcare, sorry, it's already been done, Hunter Joint Organisation. The Transcare Hunter Limited Board Representative is Councillor Leckie. The Sports and Recreation Committee consists of Councillor Barry, Councillor Bowditch, Councillor McNeil and Councillor Sculls. Just check that we're up to date with all that information. Yes, we're good to go. Now put that forward as the recommendation and motion. All those in favour? Sorry, someone to move that motion? Yeah. Councillor Douglas.
That the Muswellbrook Squash Club supported that application, the grant application, in fact both the grant applications. on the premise that they could come and run the Muswellbrook Squash Club out of the new squash courts. Now, of course, that's probably not any more obvious in the letter. If you read the Chris Augusto letter back in 2016, where they talk about the club being forced to move its competition to Denman. We know the reasons why. Sir Valentine told us that, and nearly all the members played in more competitions that were run by the club and expect to do so. So it was made quite clear from the support the squash club were giving the golf club at the time. This was a letter, obviously, in support of a grant, that the squash club had full expectation that they would be able to run their competition from there, as they continue to do today. And I haven't seen any correspondence yet that says any different to that. That says that they can't or they shouldn't run their competitions from there. As I say, it is quite disappointing, the outcome, and hopefully we will get some more documents in the next couple of weeks. And those early documents, I think, are the important ones, the ones that I say the RSL certainly wouldn't have seen, or the RSL wouldn't know about, because they predated the RSL even owning, or having anything to do with the Muswellbrook Golf Club. So I have, I'll be honest to speak first, but I certainly have a motion that I want to put to council after the vote.
We can't, just clarify, we can't put a motion forward. We can't put a motion forward on question of notice. It's just a noting. Put forward something in writing for the next meeting, but it just worked out the problem. You've got to put your finger on the microphone and hold it in when you speak. So
it's not nothing more.
There you go. Sorry.
I certainly, okay, well, if that's the case, I certainly would like the council to continue to work with the Muswellbrook Squash Club, obviously to enable the squash club to run their own competition. Well, to run the Muswellbrook Squash Club competition, like the Muswellbrook Rugby League Club runs their competition, and the Rugby Union Club and the Golf Club and everyone else run their competitions. Muswellbrook Squash Club should be able to do the same. So I'd like council to continue to work with the Muswellbrook Squash Club, and if that means working with the squash club to enable them, whether council in some way can assist with the squash courts in Denman, or certainly transport seems to be one of the issues, but the council might be able to assist in some way. But certainly I'd like to see council continue to work with the Muswellbrook Squash Club to do everything we can to make sure the community has the best outcome. After all, there is some 465,000, I think, of both ratepayers and taxpayers' money that went into those squash clubs. I say on the premise that an 80-odd-year-old club should be able to continue to do what they've been doing for 80 years.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Drayton. And we endeavour, and I have been working myself with both the squash club and with the RSL club, intend to continue to do so. The issue being, we do need to find the documents that predate what you're speaking about, to see whether there is any commitment there. But at present, what we can do is work in the best interest of the community, as you said, and hopefully come to a resolution that can be worked upon with all parties in the community. Councillor McNeil, you had the question, do you wish to speak?
No, but I will say that I was the Sport and Rec spokesperson at the time, and I'd have to acknowledge that the Muswellbrook Squash Club played a really big part in securing that grant funding from council. So yeah, I have to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I now, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I'd also like to put my support behind the Muswellbrook Squash Club. I played there for several years, from '96 onwards, till I hurt my ankle and give it away. But there's also there's a letter in here, which is actually to the Muswellbrook Squash Club court proposal, and it does state on there the Muswellbrook Squash Club, Muswellbrook RSL, and the Muswellbrook Golf Club. So there is support there to say that the Muswellbrook Squash Club actually had a lot to do with that grant, all those grants.
I don't think anyone is going to dispute that from any party or any angle. The Squash Club did a great job in securing funds for squash facilities in this shire. But I just have to commit that as a note for those items in relation to the information we noted. So I have someone to move on that, and we do have a commitment, just before I do, we do have a commitment to work further with the Squash Party, Squash Club, and work to outcome. So I commit the information that's been received. Does someone wish to move that?
Yep.
Councillor Marshall, someone second it? Councillor Dunn? I'll now commit that as a motion. All those in favour